28. I make furniture for a living. Not the cheap stuff you get from a box, but real solid wood furniture. Tables, chairs, bookshelves. It's a quiet life. I have a small workshop. Sawdust is my cologne, and my hands are always rough. It's honest work. It pays the bills. I don't need much else. Sometime last spring, I get an email about a commission. An independent bookstore downtown needs a whole wall of custom shelving. It's a big job. Good money. I go down to take measurements. The place smells like old paper and coffee. It's cozy. And that's where I first see her. Let's call her Delilah. She's behind the counter, 25 maybe. Sharp eyes, surrounded by stacks of books with angry-looking covers. She's the one who emailed me. We start talking about the project. I'm explaining wood types, finishes, load-bearing capacity. She's not just listening, she's analyzing. She tells me it's refreshing to meet a man who actually creates something tangible with his hands. Not like the soulless corporate drones who just push papers around. I'm a simple guy. I took it as a compliment. I finish the measurements, tell her I'll send a quote. As I'm leaving, she asks for my number, to discuss the design specifics later. I give it to her. I mean, why not? A few days later, the quote is approved and she texts me that night. Not about the shelves, she asks me out for a drink. I was surprised, but I said yes. Our first date was an experience. We go to some dimly lit bar where they serve drinks in jam jars. I thought we'd just talk, get to know each other. Instead, it felt like an interview. She asked me what I thought about the patriarchal structures inherent in modern society. I think I said I hadn't really thought about it much. Wrong answer. For the next hour, she explained it to me. She talked a lot about toxic masculinity and how men are conditioned to suppress their emotions. She kept looking at me expectantly, like I was supposed to have some kind of breakthrough. I just nodded and drank my beer. I figured she was just passionate about her beliefs. Different strokes for different folks. At the end of the night, she tells me I'm a fascinating case study. A man so unburdened by modern discourse. She said she found it strangely charming. We went on a few more dates. Each one was a test. One time we watched a movie at her place, some black and white foreign film with subtitles. I must have fallen asleep for a few minutes. When I woke up, she was staring at me. She said my inability to engage with challenging art was a symptom of a society that coddles the male ego. I just wanted to watch a movie. Another time, I held a door open for her. She stopped and gave me a full lecture on benevolent sexism and how it's just another form of control. It was exhausting, but there were good moments too. When she wasn't on, she could be funny and smart. I liked the way her eyes lit up when she was excited about a book. I was lonely, I guess. I focused on the good parts. I started working on the bookshelves for her store. I poured a lot of effort into them. I wanted to impress her. My best friend came by the workshop to see the progress. I told him about Delilah. He asked to see a picture of her. I showed him her social media profile. He scrolled for a few seconds and then looked at me with this deadpan expression. Her entire feed was filled with angry posts about men. He just said, "Dude, what are you doing?" I told him she wasn't like that in person. A total lie, but I said it anyway. He warned me to be careful, said she looked like the kind of person who sees problems everywhere. I should have listened. About a month into us dating, I show up on her social media, not by name of course. She posted a long text block, something like, "Embarking on a difficult but necessary journey, trying to help my partner unlearn a lifetime of toxic conditioning. It's emotionally laborious, but it is the work we must all do." There was a picture of a sunset attached. I felt a hot flash of embarrassment. My toxic conditioning? We'd been dating for a month. I asked her about it. She told me not to be so sensitive, that it wasn't personal, it was about the broader struggle. She said I should be proud to be part of her process of enlightenment. It got worse. Every little thing became content for her. I cooked her dinner one night. She posted, "Tonight my partner performed an act of domestic labor, a small step against patriarchal norms, but a step nonetheless." I took her car to get the oil changed. She posted, "Confronting the male-dominated space of the auto shop. My partner is navigating it for me. We must dismantle these boys' clubs from within." It was like my life was a script she was writing, and I was just an actor. My friend saw the posts and just sent me a single text. Run. But I was in it now. I'd finished the bookshelves. They looked amazing. The day I installed them, she was so happy. She actually kissed me in the middle of the bookstore. For a moment, it felt normal. It felt real. I convinced myself that the online stuff was just a persona, a character she played for her followers. Then, one Tuesday, it all fell apart. She texted me and said we needed to talk. I went over to her apartment after work. She broke up with me. Her reasoning was a word salad of therapy speak and activist jargon. I wasn't doing the work. I wasn't growing. She couldn't expend her emotional energy on a partner who was stagnant. I was just stunned. I didn't even know what to say. So, I just left. The next 2 weeks were weirdly quiet. I felt hurt, but also relieved. No more walking on eggshells, no more being a project. I hung out with my friend. We went to a ball game. It was normal. I figured that was it. A weird chapter in my life was over. Then, my phone rang late one night. It was her. She was crying, hysterically. She told me she'd made a terrible mistake. She confessed that right after she broke up with me, she got back with her ex, a guy named Jet. I'd heard about him. He was a bartender and part-time DJ. She had always described him as the epitome of everything wrong with men. Apparently, he had been texting her while we were dating. She said she went back to him out of weakness, and it was a disaster. He was selfish, unreliable, and emotionally unavailable. All the things she used to accuse me of being, but for real this time. She said being with him made her realize what she had with me. Stability, kindness, a gentle soul. She was laying it on thick. She said she knew she didn't deserve a second chance, but she was begging for one. The lonely part of my brain took over, the part that felt good being chosen over the bad boy. I felt like I'd won. So I did the dumbest thing I could possibly do. I told her to come over. She showed up at my door looking like a wreck. We talked for hours. She promised things would be different. No more social media posts about me. She would appreciate me for who I was. It was everything I wanted to hear. We got back together. For about a month, things were actually good. It felt like a normal relationship. We cooked dinner, watched movies, ones I actually liked, and just spent time together. The critical comments stopped. The constant analysis of my behavior disappeared. I let my guard down completely. I thought she had really changed. I was a fool. One morning, I was getting ready for work. She came into the bathroom, looking pale. She was holding something in her hand. It was a pregnancy test. It was positive. She looked at me, her eyes wide, and said, "We're having a baby." My first feeling wasn't joy. It was pure, cold dread. But I pushed it down. This is what you do. You step up. You take responsibility. I hugged her. I told her it would be okay, that we'd figure it out together. I told myself this was a good thing, a chance to build a family. The change in her was immediate. It was like a switch flipped. The soft, appreciative woman from the past month was gone. The old Delilah was back, but 10 times more intense. The pregnancy became her ultimate leverage. Everything was about the baby, and everything I did was wrong for the baby. My workshop was too dusty. The fumes from the wood finish could be harmful. I needed to think about a real job with health insurance. My diet was terrible. She threw out all my meat and replaced it with tofu and kale. My music was too aggressive. The stress wasn't good for her. She started making all these demands, always framed around the well-being of our future child. I felt completely trapped. How can you argue with a pregnant woman? Everything you say is an attack on her and the baby. So I just complied. A few weeks later, she quit her job at the bookstore. She claimed the physical and emotional stress of retail work was too risky during her first trimester. Suddenly, all the bills were on me. Rent, utilities, food, everything. I had to take on every commission I could get. I started working 12, sometimes 14-hour days in the workshop. I'd come home exhausted, covered in sawdust. And the first thing she'd say was, "Did you remember to get the organic ginger root I asked for?" My life was no longer my own. It was a service job. And then came the next phase, the public fundraising. She created a Patreon account and a GoFundMe. I saw it by accident. She left her laptop open. The title of the campaign was "Support a Future Single Mother's Journey." I read the description. My blood ran cold. She wrote a long, dramatic story. She described being in a precarious situation with a partner who was emotionally unsupportive and financially unstable. She never used my name. She just called me the father. She wrote about her dream of creating a nurturing, non-toxic environment for her child, away from the stresses of patriarchal expectations. She was painting me as a deadbeat loser while I was working myself to the bone to pay for her organic kale. The donations started pouring in from her online followers. People were sending her money, writing comments about how brave she was. "You're so strong. Stay away from that toxic man. We support you, sister." I felt sick. It was a complete fabrication, a public execution of my character. I confronted her about it. I was calm. I just asked her why she would write those things. She immediately started crying. She accused me of invading her privacy by looking at her laptop. She said I was causing her stress, which was dangerous for the baby. She claimed the money was just a safety net in case I decided to abandon her like men always do. The conversation went in circles. Any point I made was deflected back at me as an attack. I was the bad guy. I was the one causing problems. I gave up. Arguing was pointless. It just made everything worse. So I shut my mouth and went back to the workshop. I just worked. It was the only thing I could control. The isolation started to set in. She told me she didn't want my best friend coming over anymore. She said his cynical energy was bad for the pregnancy. He was the only person I had to talk to. She knew that. She systematically cut me off from my only support system. My evenings were now spent with her and her friends. They'd come over, eat the food I paid for, and talk about me like I wasn't even there. I was their little project, the caveman they were trying to civilize. They'd give Delilah advice on how to manage me, how to set boundaries against my intrusive male energy. I would just sit on the couch, listen to them, and feel something inside me slowly dying. The months dragged on. Her belly got bigger. My bank account got smaller. I felt like a ghost in my own life. I was just a machine for generating money to fund a life I had no say in. I stopped caring. I just put one foot in front of the other. Work, home, sleep, repeat. The day she went into labor, I felt nothing. No excitement, no fear, just tired. I drove her to the hospital. I sat in the room for hours while she screamed. I held her hand when she told me to. I got her water. I did what I was told. And then, the baby was born. It was a boy. The nurses cleaned him up and handed him to me. I looked down at this tiny little person. I was supposed to feel an instant connection, a rush of love. I felt nothing, just a profound sense of distance. I looked at his face, trying to see myself in him, my eyes, my nose, anything. There was nothing. He didn't look like me at all. And then I noticed it. A tiny, distinct mole on the lobe of his right ear. It was small but dark. Unmistakable. I had never seen anything like it in my family. Not on me, my parents, my grandparents. Nowhere. A strange thought flickered in my mind, but I pushed it away. Don't be crazy, I told myself. Babies look like babies. He'll change. I handed the baby back to Delilah. She was already on her phone, posting a picture for her followers. The caption read, "He's here, the beginning of my new life, free from the past. Wanjer's single mom, Waja's boy mom, Waja's healing journey." She didn't even mention me. I was just the guy who drove her to the hospital. We brought the baby home. My apartment, which was once also my sanctuary, was now a baby supply depot. Diapers, wipes, strange plastic contraptions. It wasn't my space anymore. Life became a blur of feeding, burping, and changing. Except I wasn't doing much of it. Delilah made it clear that she knew best. She'd correct the way I held him, the way I changed his diaper. She said I had rough, clumsy man hands, and that I made the baby nervous. It was easier to just stay out of the way. I retreated to my workshop. I worked, came home, gave her money for whatever she needed, and tried to sleep through the crying. It wasn't living, it was surviving. A few weeks went by like this. The baby started to look less like a generic baby and more like a little person. And he still looked nothing like me. Dark, thick hair. I have light brown hair, deep blue eyes. Mine are green. The mole on his ear seemed even more prominent now. I kept telling myself it was nothing. I was just stressed and looking for problems. One night, I couldn't sleep. I was just sitting in the living room in the dark. I went on my phone and for some reason, I searched for her ex's name. Jet. His profile was public. It was exactly what you'd expect. Pictures of him DJing at clubs, flexing at the gym, surrounded by girls. I scrolled back through the years. And then I found it. A picture from a couple of years ago. A clear close-up shot of his face. He was smiling. I zoomed in. On his right earlobe, plain as day, was a small, dark mole. The exact same mole, in the exact same spot. I felt the air leave my lungs. My hands started shaking. I compared the photo to the baby sleeping in the other room. It was identical. Everything clicked into place. The timeline, her breaking up with me, running back to him, the terrible mistake, coming back to me just 2 weeks later. It wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated move. The dread I felt on the day she told me she was pregnant. It wasn't just fear. It was my gut telling me something was deeply wrong. I had been played. I was the safe option, the stable, reliable fool who would pay the bills. I wasn't the father. I was the wallet. My friend's words echoed in my head. Run. I didn't get angry, not at first. I just felt cold. A deep, chilling certainty settled over me. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I went online and ordered a home DNA test kit, the discreet kind. It arrived a few days later in a plain brown box. Waiting for the right moment was agony. Delilah was always there, always watching. Finally, my chance came. She announced she was going to a new mother's support group, which was just her and her friends drinking wine and complaining. The second her car pulled away, I went into action. My heart was pounding. I felt like a criminal in my own home. I opened the kit. It had 2 sets of swabs, one for the child, one for the alleged father. The baby was asleep in his crib. I gently took one of the swabs and ran it along the inside of his cheek. He barely stirred. I sealed it in the biohazard bag provided. Then I did my own. I filled out the paperwork using a prepaid debit card I bought for cash, so there was no paper trail. I sent it to a P.O. box I had opened that morning. I put everything in the prepaid mailer and dropped it off at a post office in the next town over. And then I waited. The lab's website said it would take about 2 weeks. It was the longest 2 weeks of my life. I went through the motions. I went to the workshop. I came home. I handed over money. I listened to her complain. But on the inside, I was somewhere else. I was just counting the days. She didn't notice a thing. She was too wrapped up in her online persona, her brave single mother narrative. Her Patreon was doing better than ever. She was posting pictures of the baby with captions like, "Raising a son to be a good man is a revolutionary act of feminism." The irony was so thick I could choke on it. Finally, the email arrived. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely click the mouse. The subject line was simple. Your paternity test results are ready. I opened the attached PDF. I scrolled past all the scientific jargon, all the charts and graphs. I went straight to the bottom line, the conclusion. It was a single sentence. The probability of paternity is 0%. 0. I stared at that number for a long time. I expected to feel rage, a storm of anger, but I didn't. I felt free. A huge weight I didn't even realize I was carrying just lifted off me. The trap wasn't real. The cage door was open. I leaned back in my chair and started to laugh. It was a quiet, joyless laugh, but it was real. I wasn't a father. I wasn't responsible. I was just a guy who got scammed. And the scam was over. Now came the final part. The part where I took my life back. I didn't want a shouting match. I didn't want a dramatic scene. That was her world, not mine. I wanted it to be quiet, clinical, and undeniable. I spent the rest of the day planning. I called my landlord and told him I would be moving out at the end of the month. I called my bank and opened a new account. I transferred almost all of my money into it. I left just enough in the old joint account to cover the rent check that was about to clear. That evening, I went home and acted completely normal. I told Delilah I had a great day at the workshop. I asked about her day. I told her I thought we should do something special. A way to celebrate the baby. I said, "Why don't we invite your parents and your closest friends over this weekend? I'll make dinner. We can properly introduce them to their grandson." She lit up. She loved the idea. She saw it as a victory. The tame man finally embracing his domestic role. She spent the next 2 days excitedly planning the dinner party. Saturday evening arrived. Her parents were there. Her 2 best friends, the ones who always looked at me with pity and disdain, were there too. I cooked. I served them dinner. I played the part of the happy new father perfectly. They were all talking about the baby, how cute he was, who he looked like. Delilah was soaking it all in, the queen in her court. After dinner, everyone was sitting in the living room with drinks. I stood up. I said, "Thank you all for coming. It means a lot to have you here. There's something I'd like to share." Delilah beamed at me, probably expecting a heartfelt speech about how she'd changed my life. I walked over to my desk and picked up a single folded piece of paper. I didn't say a word. I walked over to Delilah, who was sitting on the couch holding the baby. I unfolded the paper and handed it to her. It was a printout of the DNA test results. I had highlighted the probability of paternity, 0% line in bright yellow. She took it, a confused smile on her face. She looked down and read it. I watched the color drain from her face. It was instantaneous. The smile vanished. Her eyes widened in panic. Her skin went pale as a sheet. She looked up at me, pure terror in her eyes. Her friends, sensing the shift in the room, leaned over to see what she was reading. One of them gasped. The other just stared, her mouth open. The room fell completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. Her father finally broke the silence. "Delilah? What is that?" She tried to speak, but only a squeak came out. She crumpled the paper in her fist. "It's a lie," she whispered. "He's lying. He's trying to get out of being a father." Her voice got louder, more hysterical. "This is what toxic men do. They abandon their responsibilities. He's trying to punish me." I just stood there, completely calm. I reached into my pocket and took out my phone. I had already typed up a post. It had a picture of the DNA results, a screenshot of her GoFundMe page. The caption was simple: "For everyone who has been following Delilah's journey and donating to her cause, I think you deserve to see this. I was led to believe I was the father. I am not. I wish her and her son's real father the best." I held up the phone so she could see the screen. My thumb was hovering over the post button. I spoke for the first time, my voice low and steady. "Tell them the truth, right now, or the whole world gets to hear it. Checkmate." She looked at my phone. She looked at the horrified faces of her parents. She looked at her friends who were already backing away from her like she was radioactive. And she broke. A horrible, ugly sob ripped out of her. She confessed everything: the affair with Jet, the pregnancy, the fear, the plan to trap me. It all came pouring out between gasps and tears. It was a pathetic, desperate performance. But it was the truth. Her mother started crying. Her father just stared at the floor, his face a mask of shame. Her two best friends didn't say a word. They just picked up their purses, gave her one last look of disgust, and walked out the door. The party was over. I looked at the scene. This life that had been built on a foundation of lies, now just a pile of rubble. I felt nothing but a quiet sense of finality. I turned to her parents. "I think it's time for you all to leave my home." They just nodded, helped a sobbing Delilah to her feet, and shuffled out. The next morning, while she was gone, I packed all of her things and the baby's things into boxes and trash bags. I left them neatly stacked by the front door. I took my tools, my clothes, and my personal belongings, and I moved out. I texted her the address of a motel she could stay at, and told her there was money in the old account for a week. After that, she was on her own. Then I blocked her number. I blocked her on every platform. I drove to my new empty apartment. It was small. It smelled like fresh paint. It was all mine. I didn't have much, but I had my work. I had my freedom, and I had my name back. The next day I went back to my workshop. I turned on the lights, put on some music, and picked up a piece of beautiful unfinished maple. The hum of the saw was the best sound I had ever heard. I started working, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt like myself again.